Hey everybody, Professor Snart checking in again. This time instead of video of me, I'm doing video of our class, which I'll often do so that I can sort of walk us through some of the things that are going on here. I'm recording this on Friday morning, so I always go into our due dates. It's like my main thing that I go into just to remind, honestly, myself of where we're at. And I know that Unit 1 is due Friday, January 16th, so at the end of today, which is when I'm recording this, or the Friday that I'm recording this. All the stuff in Unit 1 is due, which kind of includes the little quiz that you'll find in this orientation area. And it's towards the bottom off of my screen. This stuff is clearly not related directly to like the composition content of our course, but I think is really important. It's mostly common sense stuff that you probably know in the back of your mind already, but bringing it forward like this is really kind of important at the start of the course to really help people focus on the importance of time management. And even though we know it in the back of our minds, we really need to make sure that we're actually practicing some of this stuff to be successful. So again, we know that Unit 1 is due pretty soon. That includes the student homepage, right? Which in addition to a little intro of yourself, you're also providing a picture. Make sure that that picture shows up as part of the post, not just as an attached file. So make sure you're doing that part right. And then, of course, the other piece of Unit 1 is the introductions discussion board. Again, sort of a duplicate a little bit of that introduce yourself, but also a good opportunity, maybe even primarily a good opportunity to use this tool, the discussion board tool, that's going to be so kind of central to our course as we move forward. As is almost always the case with our discussion, there'll be a reply to another student, reply to 2 posts, whatever it might be. So obviously don't forget that piece of it. The first unit is really pretty easy points. Since it's really kind of informal writing, you're not being graded on the writing component of it, just on whether you obviously did it on time, completed the assignment, and made an honest effort beyond just a couple of like brief sentences, or your replies are just yeah, me too, or something really simple like that. You'll also probably see within your own view of Blackboard, and certainly in mine, that if I go into our home pages here, I know this view is a little bit different, but even if I look at mine, you can see when that was posted. I obviously did mine a while ago, but I can see each of yours too. And if you've done yours already, great. If you can get it done Friday morning, that's great. I know we move quickly in the 8-week format, but if again it becomes sort of habitual that you're always posting work to the discussion board, your replies are like just minutes after your own original post, I start to notice that those timestamps are always bumping right up against the deadline. So again, back to that sort of orientation piece and being a successful online learner, you really do want to be conscious of getting work done in a timely fashion, so you're not always doing it kind of at the last minute. In that Monday is a holiday, at least in the non-virtual world, I'm going to look a little bit forward here to our next unit, unit number 2. What is literature? It's due Tuesday, January 20th. So again, you really need to budget your time. Once you finish this up, it's a pretty quick turnaround. Thinking about, can you work a little bit on the weekends? That Monday holiday, gets in the way a little bit, or requires that you sort of schedule with that in mind. It's not just a usual work day. And then obviously you'd have, Tuesday to be working on this as well. So already it's good to be thinking of, is there a sort of pattern that you can begin to develop for yourself for when you're checking into Blackboard or when you're doing the work and all of that kind of stuff. So let's look quickly at unit number 2. Before we get again into some of the real sort of composition concepts for our course, because what we read are works of literature, quote unquote, that's one of the sort of a loaded term that we're actually going to think about in this particular unit. We do want to think like, what is literature? What are some of the common sort of vocabulary surrounding literature? And then we have another discussion board to look at. So early on, we're going to talk about plagiarism. I think just about everybody knows kind of basically what plagiarism is. It's really not the gray area that some people like to pretend it is, especially in the context of a course like ours. and the kinds of writing that we're doing. But we're going to get that on the table right here early in the course. Pretty much a zero tolerance policy in the class. Obviously, plagiarism is just the big academic no, you really can't go there anymore. Not that you ever could, but it's so easy. I know sort of to find stuff on the student side, but it's as easy for me to find that stuff too. So it's I don't know. Let's not even talk more about it. There it is. Plagiarism. We've covered it. Okay. Literary terms, nothing really more than a handout here. Useful to sort of think about or have as you begin then to do the readings for later units when we read our first short stories. You could be thinking about, we're not talking about esoteric terms here, but things like character, setting, plot, things that you're probably familiar with, but it's good to have those terms in mind as you do not just the writing for the course, but the reading, so you can really think about good questions to ask as you're reading, like what is the setting? Does it contribute to themes somehow? Who are the main characters? Are there minor characters? And that kind of stuff. It's helpful to read kind of actively or with those questions in mind. You often get more out of the reading than if you just sit down and kind of hope for the best. A brief quiz here on those terms. Again, nothing too challenging, I hope. It's open book, so I'm not trying to get you to memorize these things. I'm just trying to get you to use these sheets or use terms or look up the answers as you go. It's not an exercise in memorization. Okay, now we get to the main section of our unit here. We have a PDF reading that is actually from an older edition of the full version of the textbook, not the custom edition that we use. And it talks about or asks this question, what is literature? Probably not a question that you maybe have thought about too much, but a good one for us to sort of get your mind kind of in that framework as we prepare to get into later units in our course where we will be doing some of this reading. And then ours isn't a literature class, so we're not concerned solely with this question or just interpretation of literary works. We're more interested in the composition of the papers, the essays that are based on those works. But clearly, to write an effective paper, you have to have done some effective reading. And so this is like an early, very sort of generic or broad way of thinking about or preparing ourselves for doing some of that effective reading. So notice that, as usual, there's a response requirement, or a posting requirement, but also a response requirement. Here you're responding to 2 other posts. And this is, again, why it's really crucial that the bulk of the class isn't waiting until the last minute, because if most people are doing just this main post right against that deadline, then it's really hard to do those responses. They're rushed. People who've posted early are kind of then stuck because they're waiting for these to respond to. So again, it's beneficial for you and of course for your classmates as well to make sure you're posting not just on time, but right against the deadline, but in a timely manner, giving yourself and others time to do this post effectively, but also to respond effectively. It won't take hours, right? I'm not pretending that it does, but I shouldn't see your post here at like 11:30 p.m. and then response number 1 at 11:35 p.m. and response number 2 at 11:37 p.m. That suggests like, 10-15 minutes of your time in a course that, is not only requiring more time than that, but because it's 8-week, it would sort of be like double the time. If you were taking this in the classroom, you would be in that classroom for sort of an unbelievable 6 hours, right, a week. If you did this 1102 as a face-to-face 16-week 3-credit course, you're in, let's say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for that 50-minute or that hour-long block. In the 8-week, that doubles. So that's a lot of time. I don't pretend that all of our units take like 6 hours necessarily. In fact, the conversion between like minutes in a classroom and learning time is really something that this online format allows us to get away from. But clearly it means that if you're spending like 20 minutes at the last second doing the work, that's just not going to cut it. You may be able to sort of squeak by in a unit like this, but that is going to catch up with you really, really quickly. So again, as with the plagiarism thing, I'm sort of throwing that out there Not because I've seen it happen already in our class or anything like that, but I've seen it happen in prior classes, and the more we can do to avoid it early on, to set good patterns early on, the better. Okay, so again, be sure you are keeping up with due dates, not just where we're at, but kind of where we're going moving forward. And any questions or concerns that you have, be in touch with me right away.